Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Weighing In after a week's hiatus. I am David Mirikitani with Mark Ostrander. Grant Turner is on his way back from Tokyo, did a great job over there. We're brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. We took last week off because I had COVID. It's terrible, Mark. it is debilitating. But if you're ever going to get sick during the Olympics, might be the best time to have to stay home and watch TV.
Yeah, I'm going to pass. So I don't want to get it.
No.
I know you and your significant other were not feeling very well. And so I'm glad you're doing better.
Yeah, the main thing was I got sick like 2 days after my father and I were together. And my dad's 78 years old, probably in better health than you and I combined, but nonetheless, 78 years old. And so it was good to not be around him when that happened. So, but anyway, so there's a couple other things that happened in the world of wrestling. We're not talking about them. All we're going to talk about the Olympics. Okay. Because we're not crazy. All right. So we're just going to get into it. I'm going to share our screen here. So this is basically what happened. So let's just start with the ladies. And I just put this chart together. Quick summary: Hildebrandt third, Winchester fifth, Maroulis third, Miracle 0-1, Mensa Stock Olympic champion, Adeline Gray Olympic runner-up. Our cumulative record for the ladies were 15-6, which is pretty remarkable. This is obviously not the order that they wrestled, because Hildebrandt actually was the last American to get her draw, but this is in weight class order. I'm just going to turn it over to you for a few minutes about the ladies.
Okay. I got to watch quite a bit of this. So, I was pretty up to date what was going on. Hildebrandt, phenomenal wrestler, phenomenal tournament. Could have easily and should have easily been in the finals, losing in the semis, up 7 points, going into the last 3 minutes, and just got whittled away. And that's something that's going to come with experience. You got to remember, this has not been around at the Olympic sports for a long time. So our women are still learning the process. Obviously, Japan, phenomenal country, unbelievable athletes when it comes to women's wrestling. And they're pretty good men too, but let's give them credit where they're really strong is the female women's wrestling.
I think they had 4 gold medals, right? 4 of the 6 gold medals, the Japanese won. Yeah.
So, but we competed with them, David. We really stood up, and they sent a notice to the other countries of the world in women's wrestling that we're here and we're here to stay, and we're only going to get better. So, what can you say?
Your observation about the Japanese women is interesting, because I was lucky enough to have Tadaka Hata on a couple months ago. And, my dad actually stopped by today, and we watched some of the matches together. My dad still got rabbit ears, so he came over to watch some matches, on the DVR. But he was talking about the Japanese women. And obviously, full disclosure, I'm half Japanese. My father's full Japanese. And so we're very interested in that system that country has. And one of the things that Hata talked about and my dad talked about is that it's a whole system over there where women's wrestling here is kind of catch as catch can. That for years, high school girls had to wrestle against boys. We're now just getting certain states to approve wrestling at the high school level. Obviously, that's going to lead into more college programs, but it's just not as systematic. But you're absolutely right. America wrestled unbelievable. I mean, Mensa Stock was probably the story of the games the first week of the Olympics.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, she is she's a beast. I mean, she just goes out and takes care of business. You could see the look on her face after she won it. She was in tears, and she even kind of second guessed herself. I can't believe I just won an Olympic gold. And I mean, she had been working for that. And there was never a doubt whether or not she was going to win it. And that's pretty rare to go through a tournament with that caliber of competition, David, and never doubt by the way you're wrestling that anybody can beat you. So
I think she had doubts. I just think we watched it and didn't have doubts because she was so dominant. So, Mark, one of the things you and I have talked about off air was I was blessed to have called the 2019 World Championships.
Mm-hmm.
And who knew then that we would have a podcast on USA Wrestling in 2021, that the Olympics would be pushed off, But one of the blessings of that was watching a lot of these athletes wrestle against bigger brackets, because, these were 16-person brackets and the worlds were 64-person brackets,
Yep.
With some buys, but significantly bigger. And Mensa Stock ran through the world championships. She also beat Adeline Gray in one of those flow, sort of pay-per-view performance meets. So she had proven it. But one of the stories that people forget is in 2016, she was our representative, but like a Jordan Oliver, didn't qualify the weight. And so, and we're going to get to the men obviously later. And I don't know how long this is going to take and where we'll cut off, and we'll just get through the rest of it next week. But that's a big thing to carry around. Like most of us, like, hey, we were the Olympic team representative. That'd be amazing. Like Kayla Miracle went 0-1. Well, she's still better than 99.9% of people that ever wrestled, that ever put on a pair of wrestling shoes. But she did statistically the worst of the women on the team. So when that happened with Mensa Stock in 2016, I think she really used that as motivation. She's such a positive person. Like she's super charismatic. She's super genuine when you watch and listen to her. Like nobody has a bad thing to say about her. And she said she's going to use a bunch of her USA Wrestling winnings, the $250K, to help her mom buy a food truck and start a business, which I can only imagine the sponsorship that she should be able to help her mom / her get. But it doesn't seem like it could have happened to a better person.
Oh, I agree with you there. And I never meant to say that she didn't believe she was going to win the Olympic gold. But after it was over, the look on her face, how much she had been pressured on her, especially after winning the Worlds in 2019, David. We understand when you go in as a favorite, there's more pressure on an individual or individuals when they're the favorite. And to be able to fulfill that dream and wrestle as a complete athlete as she did was just amazing. And, hats off to her, hats off to basically everybody that qualified to the Olympics, because that alone is an immense,
Yeah, let's go through it medal-wise. So Mensa Stock, amazing performance. Adeline Gray, wins. Dominant, got a little less dominant each round, which is kind of what you'd imagine in a tournament as you go deeper into it. And then lost to her friend, the German, in the finals. Didn't get hosed, just got beat. One of the things that struck me about Adeline Gray was her capacity to comprehend the moment. When they interviewed her afterwards, and she was talking about she's a powerful woman, she's a role model. This is something where women can see that they can do this. And she was our first female wrestler. So, she wrestled first, and to get a medal right off the bat, which is amazing, set the tone. The other thing, which I don't think we can talk about enough about her, is watching her in the stands the next 6 days afterwards, rooting for all the other styles and just going crazy. I mean, she looked like a little kid, just in the most joyful way possible. I mean, like just uninhibited support of the rest of the Greco team, of the men's freestyle team, and of the women's freestyle team. It was a really just an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah, David, the thing I noticed about her, and I don't know if you noticed this or not, but being a 5-time world champion, she's basically is the face of American wrestling for the females. I mean, she started it out being the person that everybody looked up to. Obviously, Maroulis was an Olympic champion. Not that she didn't deserve it, because it was a phenomenal tournament back in 2016, but she wasn't a 5-time world champion. So, I mean, everybody looked at Gray, and then not to be, to place at the Olympics in 2016 was very hard on her.
Yeah.
She was able to stay with it for another 5 years, David. We know how hard that is when you're chasing a dream and it gets postponed even 1 year. It took her 5 years to get to this opportunity to become an Olympic medalist, and she did it. So, very impressive.
Yeah.
The whole thing was just so much fun to watch. And
Yeah.
I don't care what style you talk, to watch America come out there and perform the way they did was so much fun. It really
Well, and remind me at the end, but we need to talk about the historical perspective of America's performance. Anyway, so we talked about we'll go by medals. We talked about first and second. We talked about Hildebrandt for third. She wrestled really well. John Smith and Burroughs did a great job on the commentary. If anybody's listening, please give me a shot at that Jason Knapp job. I want to just be the play-by-play guy and set those guys up in 24 for sure. But anyway, Hildebrandt, like you said, was up 7-0 and tried to protect the lead. And it's easy to say she did the wrong thing because it didn't work out. But that's almost like poker or like blackjack. Like somebody doesn't hit a 15 when the dealer's showing 10 and the dealer goes bust. Just because the dealer went bust doesn't mean you made the right decision.
Yep.
It's easy to say, hey, you should just go score 3 more points and you're in the Olympic final. And I've coached guys like that. We had a kid that was in high school that was beating Austin Gomez 8-2 and kind of tried to chill out and ended up losing 14-10. I think what people forget when you're watching folk style versus freestyle is, like, if you're beating me 8-2 in folk style, if I get a takedown and take to 4, then I got to cut you. Then it's 9-4, then 9-6, then 10-6. Like, they're basically 1-point takedowns all along the way, except for the last one and except if they're stalling points, where in 8-2 in freestyle is takedown, 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 or takedown in a gut, and all of a sudden you're within 1 score. So, but she wrestled unbelievable for bronze. She and her coach are unbelievably close. She wrestled a great tournament. And then Maroulis takes bronze, really only had 1 close match against the Japanese wrestler, 3 shot clock points. There's a lot of Twitter conversation about how, should have went the other way. And obviously I'm a homer. I wish it had gone that way. But when nobody scores an offensive point, it's going to be a coin flip. And you probably should assume you're going to lose that coin flip against the home country. I'm not saying any of us could have done any better, but it wasn't like one side took 14 shots and the other side took none. It wasn't like that. They were both so good defensively that neither one of them took a lot of risk.
Yeah. And, the thing is, David, she had been hurt for quite a while.
Yeah.
And she'd been out. And basically her first tournament back, David, she went to Poland just to get the rust off and did not perform well, but went out and performed and got that out of her system. And then she goes to the Olympics and looked like same old her. I mean,
trials, first of all,
yeah.
Trials where she had that epic series with Jenna Burkett.
Yeah.
Where she was 2 out of 3 and she hit that foot sweep to end the trials. Yeah. I think the Jenna Burkett series really got her ready for this. Yes. I mean, I think Jenna has the right to feel like she was a part of that medal.
Yeah.
I think she battle tested her just in that series alone.
I agree 100%.
So Winchester goes 2-2. She won the world in the non-Olympic weight. And there's two things I've told you. One is how much the world looks at a huge gap between an Olympic weight and a non-Olympic weight in the amount of respect they give those, where I don't think America looks at it that differently. I think in her case, she's super lean at 55 kilos, and to get down to 53 was just, she looked tired like the whole tournament. And I know she handles her diet right. I know like all these kind of things she does correctly. So I don't think it was like she didn't, you know, handle everything she could. I just think she's a really big human being for 53 kilos. That being said, she made it to the bronze medal match and literally just got caught in a headlock and pinned, which was, I've had that happen to me. I'm guessing you probably had that happen to you at one point in your life or another. It just sucks that it happened for an Olympic medal.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I was impressed with her performance, David, and I think the weight cut, I think it might have had a little something to do with it. But she went out and competed. She easily could have been an Olympian. She was right there on the doorstep, and she didn't really get blown out. She got in a couple bad situations where you think she's going to learn from that. And I could definitely see her in 3 more years, be on that medal stand. I really could.
Well, okay. So Miracle goes 0-1 and she just looked off. She didn't score the way she's used to scoring. I think it just first time there. I just don't think she wrestled her best match. No disrespect to the other athletes, but the other thing is when you lose a really close match in the first round and your athlete has to go win 2 more matches, it's pretty unlikely that you get pulled through the finals unless you wrestled amazing like a Thomas Gilman, which we'll talk about later, against Ugaev. Yep. But overall, so here's what's interesting. The world team trials are like in 5 weeks up at Lincoln, the weekend after Labor Day, terrible to say this, but the 9/11 weekend. Now, the way this is set up, if you medaled at the Olympics, you have the spot for the world. Like if you notice, they called the games in Tokyo the 2020 games because this will be the 2021 World Championships.
Yeah.
So Menzistock, Gray, Maroulis, and Hildebrandt all have their spots. The other 2 weights will be wrestled, and then the other 4 non-Olympic weights will as well. So it'd be interesting to see like if a Winchester stays down at 53 or goes back up to 55. And I think where she declares will probably have a lot to do. She'll be the number 1 seed at either weight, but 4 of the 10 weights are pretty much spoken for. One of the things that we'll probably ask USA Wrestling and get an answer on in the next couple of weeks are, how does that work? So like if I'm going to use men's freestyle because that's something we're all more familiar with. Like if Gilman says, I am wrestling at the World Championships, do they wrestle a tournament to determine who the backup is if anything happens? Or do they go off the Olympic trials and vetoes the alternate? Because if not, you wrestle at 57, almost hoping Gilman gets hurt, which is a terrible way to go through life, as opposed to like Vito and Dayton and Gross and Cologne and Nation and everybody else moving up to 61 to try to make a,
yep.
Sorry, yeah, all those guys, yeah, to try to make a spot on the team. So I'm sure USA Wrestling will declare that. Overall, it's very interesting watching social media, all the people that are sort of, whoever even touched one of these athletes like for 15 minutes is kind of trying to take credit. But the women's performance is unbelievable. Congratulations to Coach Steiner. I got to interview him 3 or 4 years ago, and they were talking about the fundraising they were doing and the camps they were running and working on specific skills. And you could really see that it came together. And it seemed like those ladies really pulled for each other. And it was interesting. The women's wrestling was set up where it was 1 weight each day. where Greco was two weights, two weights, two weights, and
Yep.
then men's freestyle was two weights, two weights, two weights. So we had a women's weight each day, which made it really interesting to watch because in 5 of the 6 weights, we made it out to the medal round.
Yeah.
So let's go to Greco. So I put this stat in here. I put if we didn't qualify the weight, like it was a -1 for us. So
Okay.
Havisov goes 0-2, Sancho goes 0-0, Porter didn't qualify the weight, Stefanowicz goes 0-1, Kuhn didn't qualify the weight, and Hancock goes 1-1. So on my math, we go -1 and 4 overall. We had 1 win at the Olympics in Greco, and that was Hancock. And Havisov actually got a really good call in the second match. He got put on top first, even though the other guy, it looked like, was controlling the center more and didn't score. Stefanowicz and Hancock, I both feel like there were challenge bricks that could have happened that might have made a difference. Stefanowicz got put down, escaped, and they blew the whistle and put him back down, and we didn't challenge. And I don't know if we didn't challenge because we thought we'd lose, or if there's a rule that says you can't try to escape, but I don't think that's a rule. And he certainly didn't jump the whistle. So I think it could have made a significant difference. Then the Hancock match, and I don't want to get specific, but there's not going to be that much to talk about in Greco. Hancock's 1-1. He's losing on second point, and they go out of bounds, and they call the point for the other guy, and Hancock wants to challenge. And I'm screaming at my TV, don't challenge, because 1-1 or 2-1 in that case is identical. You know, if Hancock scores a point, he either wins 2-2 or 2-1 on last point. Yep. And they challenge, and now they're down 3-1, and it comes all the way back, and he loses either 5-4 or 4-3, but he loses basically on the challenge point.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts about Greco?
You know, we had talked about this, David, and you made some really good points when you had talked to me earlier. And I keep most of the things we talk about, David, kind of to ourselves, because it's just our opinion and it's nobody else's opinion, obviously. But, you were telling me, we were kind of going through it, and you were telling me that we are very competitive at the cadet level in Greco when it comes to the world stage. Our guys go out there and they perform they do a really good job. Same thing in juniors. We're competitive. We're not winning maybe the goals, but we're getting in there right there to be place winners at the Worlds. Sometimes we're getting up on the stands. Sometimes, it's real close, but they're competitive matches. And like you said, when we had talked, is that after juniors, it focuses so much on the collegiate style because these kids want to go to college. They want to get a degree.
And a scholarship.
Yeah, and a scholarship. We're kind of handcuffing ourselves because we don't have a system set up yet where these kids can follow that dream and perform and get the matches that they can, traveling overseas to do the tournaments, because that's what we're going to have to do. We can do freestyle tournaments in the United States, and we have enough talent to be competitive with other countries just in the United States. You go to Fargo and watch our kids wrestle freestyle. You go to, they have tournaments, in freestyle all over in the United States, and there's really good competition for these guys. We don't seem to have, we have a few guys that are really good in Greco, but when you only have a few and you don't see those guys all the time, it's kind of hard to really improve. And I don't know the answer to this.
Well,
maybe some of the listeners do.
Here's the answer. So what you and I talked about when you say this was an off the air conversation when probably 2, 3, 4 days ago, when you were just checking to make sure how I was doing with COVID, frankly, just being my friend. And we're talking about Greco. And this is my point. If you do anything in life and you do it for a time, and then you take a window off, and then you come back to it, and somebody else has been doing it that whole time,
yep,
they're going to be better. Whether it's like playing the guitar, whether it's shooting a bow and arrow, whatever it is, if you step away from that skill set for a significant period of time, people are going to pass you. Okay. So now we can get in this whole conversation of how much folk style helps freestyle or not. But the point of that is folk style is close enough to freestyle that it doesn't screw you up. And we've got multiple examples of guys coming right out at the collegiate level and medaling all the way back to John Smith and probably earlier than that, and most recently Gable Stevenson. Okay. But here's the thing. You and I both recruited. I was just coaching at Fargo. If you win Greco as a junior, or you take 5th as a junior in freestyle, I can tell you which one's the biggest scholarship. It's the freestyle one. Yep. Because the coaches want you to be able to grab legs, defend legs. Okay. They're trying to find the style that's most similar to collegiate. So here's the other thing, like Hancock is our best Greco wrestler, period. Pound for pound, he's our best guy. And he proved it. He's the only guy that won a match there. He has to go overseas to get good looks. Like he's just not even getting, there's nobody here that's close to him.
Yeah.
The other thing about it is this, and I think I had this conversation with you. If you look at who's on our team, okay, and women's is goofy because we don't have enough colleges to really compare it, okay? But our men's team, Gilman, should have won nationals, was a medalist a bunch of times. Jordan Oliver, 2-time champ, maybe should have been a 3-time champ. Dake, 4-time champ. Taylor, 4-time finalist, 2-time champ. Snyder, 3-time champ, 4-time finalist. Stevenson, 1st and 3rd with 2 years to go, is going to be a gigantic favorite to win 3 more titles. Okay. If he sticks around, that's a whole nother conversation. Yes. Okay. If you go through and you try to tell me what Sancho, Porter, Stefanowicz, or Hancock did in college, I'd be super interested if even the most hardcore guys could tell you that. Adam Kuhn we know about, right? Yep. I mean, but his best style is not even Greco. He's better at freestyle. I mean, those guys don't even really practice freestyle or Greco up there at Michigan. And he just made the team because he's big. And Havisov's obviously, not from America, so he didn't go through our collegiate system. But until you get the best athletes to want to wrestle Greco, you combine with not getting the best athletes and then no one concentrating on Greco for like 5 years. Like, for me, it'd be like not doing jiu-jitsu for 5 years. And then you come back, like you're just going to lose to guys you're not supposed to lose to. Like if you're a purple belt and you haven't done it for 5 years, you're going to lose to a good blue belt. And that's probably a good example because you're supposed to have a certain set of skills at each belt. Well, part of those skills are you're sharpening the saw all the time. You're constantly working on improving, like you were a very good coach and a very good recruiter. But if I took you out of it for 10 years and you didn't coach and you didn't recruit and you weren't watching wrestling and you weren't judging talent and you couldn't figure out, hey, the guy that took 3rd will actually be better than the guy that took 1st in college because you know how to watch matches. And I dump you back into it, you're not going to be the same guy that you were. And that's the problem. Now, how you solve that problem is the $64,000 question, because we're not going to change. If they change the NCAA style of wrestling, they're going to change it to freestyle. They're not going to change it to Greco. And when people talk about wanting to change, collegiate to freestyle, the problem with that is now you got to find a bunch of high school coaches that actually know something about freestyle. And we don't have that many guys that actually understand freestyle. Now it'll be interesting to see what changes they make with the Greco program. The other thing that's gigantically important in all this that nobody wants to talk about is the RTCs. In freestyle, the RTCs made a huge difference. These guys they're building training around these guys, with the exception of Nittany Lion, which just crushed it there.
Yep.
The rest of these guys had an RTC that was pretty much built around them. You know, I mean, Dake was the guy at Spartan Combat. You know, Jordan Oliver was the guy at University of North Carolina or Tar Heel. Gilman and Taylor and Snyder obviously were training, you know, with Penn State or Nittany Lion. And then Gable Stevenson, Minnesota's been good at coaching heavyweights for years. They've made a commitment to that. Their coaching staff, the size of their coaches, having a Trevor Brandvold on staff, you know, those kind of guys, they're committed to that.
Yep.
We don't even have an RT. Like our friend Terry Pack probably runs the best RTC in the country in Greco.
Yes.
Him and Dominguez with those guys at my wrestling club in Omaha, and the Marines just announced they're defunding their wrestling program, which is worse. It's going to make Greco worse, not better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a problem. I don't know how we fix it, but I can tell you what the causes of the problems are. We've just laid them out.
Yep. And David, the thing is, you know, you could say, well, we're not throwing money into Greco like we do into freestyle. And I'm not even sure that's the answer. I don't think just throwing money at a sport and saying, okay, you guys are going to travel here, 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 and here. We're so far behind some of these other countries in Greco right now that it's going to have to be revamped. The whole process is going to have to be revamped if we're going to compete in Greco on a world stage. And like you said, I don't know the answer. You have not come up with the solution yet. I think you're a lot closer than I will ever be.
I think I've been pretty good at identifying some of the problems, but identifying the problems and
fixing it is two different things.
Is really not much better than the person that has no idea.
Yeah.
And I hate to be the guy that goes, hey, here's what somebody's doing wrong without a suggestion on here's what we need to do right. You know, but I mean, here's where I sort of fundamentally disagree with you. I do think if they threw a bunch of money at it, if the money was spent intelligently, I think it would make a difference. Here's the trick of it. Okay, let's talk about a very specific thing about Greco. You have to be good at defending gut wrench. You have to be good at scoring with gut wrench. You have to be good at defending the lift, and you have to be good at scoring on a lift, okay? Let's use a different sport. Let's say like you're a baseball player and you can't hit a curveball. Okay, like you just mash fastballs all days, but somebody throws a curveball and you know, you look like me trying to hit the ball. The only way for you to get better is to practice, take batting practice with a guy or several guys that have good curveballs. So we have to find the guys that are better than us at these skills and like get lifted and get gut wrenched and feel that and understand that. You coached a long time. I coached a long time. Some of coaching is just putting really good guys in a room together and letting them wrestle and they figure stuff out. And then you watch and you go, see, David, this is what Mark did to you. This is, you know, did you feel that? Like, did you, you know, or, hey, did you see that ball coming out of his hand and he turns his wrist this way and that's why it's a curveball? Whatever the case may be, picking up the rotation, picking up the seams on the ball in that scenario, whatever the case may be. But until we have a bunch of people that are good at this, it's going to be hard. It's a chicken and the egg, right? Like you can't get good without being around other good people. And we don't have the top-notch guys to begin with. But I mean, like Egypt killed America in Greco. Now, I'm going to go on a very slight tangent, but it's still definitely tied to this. When I was in college, there was East and West Germany were separated. And I had a professor that said to us, do you really think if we wanted, we could not have the #1 women's swimming team in the world? That's when East Germany was beating us. And we had this whole argument about it. It was a super interesting debate about who was using performance enhancing drugs and all this stuff. But the bottom line was this, he goes, if we wanted to invest millions and millions of dollars, we would have the best women's swimming team. Because we would start developing kids with big hands and big wingspans and long legs. And, you know, we would put them in separate schools and they would learn how to swim when they were 6, 7 years old. And by the time they're 14, they'd kill everybody. Because we don't care to that level. He goes, because if we did, we'd be doing it. So the point is, we're not investing enough to make a difference because we don't want to. I mean, it's it, plain and simple. Like, I lost 54 pounds in a year. I made decisions. Like, I stopped eating ice cream. I started working out. Like, you have to make decisions. And right now, the decisions we're making in Greco are not working.
Yep.
But part of it is, which way do you turn where it's going to get better? Because I don't know.
Yeah. I think something's going to have to be done. Like I said earlier, I don't have the answers. So to say something needs to be done and not have any solutions is, I'm talking out the side of my mouth. I just know there's something wrong. I mean, we're looking at it, and I'm looking at the records, and I'm looking at how we did, and we're not performing. We're not even close to performing. Besides Hancock, who was in matches, like you said, he's our best Greco shot. And when you only have one guy as our best shot, out of 6 weights, that there's an issue. So we need to get better there. But
yeah, we're gonna have to figure it out, right? But I mean, like, let's just say this: the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And when you look at this, even if you don't count the minuses, we went 1 and 4, and then had two weights not qualify. So it's probably on the conservative side. You say if they had qualified, they would have went 0 and 1. We would have been 1 and 6.
yeah.
When you compare that to 15 and 6 for the ladies and 15 and 3 for the men in freestyle, it's the gap, or the chasm, is like unbelievably significant. Like, if you compared the men's and women's freestyle teams, the men did better, but it's close. Like, it's really close,
Agreed.
Where if you compare either one of those to Greco, I mean, I think the most obvious statement is, of the 3 teams, that was the one that lagged.
Yeah.
So I've got my timer running. We got about 7 minutes left. I say we just start, and then I'll have to cut us off, and we'll just finish.
Sounds good.
Let's do this. Let's talk about the weight that American didn't wrestle, 65 kilos, okay? So Odaguro wins it. That weight was fascinating. You got Haji Aliyev, you got Rashidov, you got Musakayev. I mean, all of these guys that have all these medals and everything else. And Odaguro is one of my favorite guys to watch wrestle. I love his style. I love his ability to get to legs, and just, that was my favorite weight class to call in 2019. I don't know if you saw the Cuban where he was winning like 8-0 and ended up getting tech fall like 21-11 or something like that.
I watched it. It was, he got really tired, David. I'm just going to say he got tired. He was by far the superior wrestler. Oh my gosh. When he wasn't tired, when he was out there actually competing, he was phenomenal. I mean, it was like night and day. There wasn't even a comparison. I can't even, I never seen, in all my days of coaching, David, I've never seen a meltdown as bad as that young man melted down in that match. And I've seen a lot of meltdowns, but nothing that compares to that. The way he dominated that first 3 minutes of the match was unbelievable. But you notice something was happening right before the end of the first period. He started to lose a step. And when that happened, this other guy that he wrestled, and I can't remember who it was he was wrestling, came out like it was no tomorrow. And this guy could not get off the mat fast enough. I think, we used to have that saying, if you could bury yourself under the mat, you would. That's exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to crawl under the mat and never be seen again, because you could tell his coach, if his coach could have thrown the white flag or thrown a white towel in there, I think he would have, because it was just, I felt so bad for him because he is so talented. He really is.
And so people understand that he's the guy that beat Zayn the first round in 2019. And Rovat was spot on with this. He was the guy doing the commentary with me.
Yep.
And he said, he goes, this guy's really talented. He's probably a little more talented than Zayn. He's going to run out to a big lead. He'll probably hang on and win by a point or two. But Zayn will get him so tired, he'll lose and it'll knock Zayn out of the tournament. And those world championships are the same way. Your guy has to make the finals. The
Sure.
problem is when you lose in the round of 64, as opposed to the round of 16, that guy's got to run the gauntlet. And when you're worried about your guy having cardio issues, like that's not the guy you want to have to hitch your wagon to. And the problem is you have to hitch your wagon to whoever beats you. Like, I mean, we'll get into that with Gilman and Ugaev and Dake and the Belarusian, you know, and those kind of things, or the Belarusian, I guess is the right way to say it. But I think that weight class, what stuck out to me is this. I think Jordan Oliver is right there with all those guys. I'm not saying he would beat those guys. I'm not saying he would have been the Olympic champion, but, you know, he was very close to Musakayev, and Musakayev was in the top 6. Okay. So they're all kind of one scramble apart, maybe. Maybe Jordan's 2 scrambles apart from being the best in the world. Okay.
Right.
So people understand this. This is probably a good thing to end on. There's 3 ways to qualify for the Olympics. One is to take top 6 in the world in the year before. 2 is to take top 2 in your continental, because there's 4 continentals. And then the last 2 spots are the last chance qualifier. The easiest one is your continental. We're in the weakest continental, the Pan Ams. You compare that like to the African, the Asian, and the Europe, the depth is not there. Usually it's us and Cuba in most of these weights. And like when Zayn, you know, was beating the Argentinian and got pinned while he was doing a leg lace, I remember calling you, I'm like, we're probably not going to qualify that weight for the Olympics, because I had watched the Worlds and I saw all these really good guys not place in the top 6 because of how the bracket fell out.
Yep.
I'm like, all these guys are going to be going through their continentals, but then the last 2 spots, like it's going to be terrible. You know, so one of the things that America has to do is we got to get through the Pan Ams. Like that has to be how we get through, just to take all that pressure off. So I think if Jordan Oliver's in this bracket, he's got a pretty decent chance, you know?
I guess I was talking to my brother, and he's a big wrestling fanatic. Not to the point where I am, because I did the coaching and I competed through college, but he goes, who's our answer? Who's our answer there? And honestly, I couldn't give him a response because I said, I have no idea. I go, if you look at what we've done lately, you know, Oliver's getting up there. I mean, he is no spring chicken, David. He's getting a little bit older. 3 years down the road, I'm not sure he's going to be competing in 3 years. And he may be, and obviously he's talented enough. But if you look at these other weights, you can name 2 or 3 guys that are right there on the doorstep that could go into the Olympics and maybe have a shot at placing. At that weight, I want to know who's the next man up.
Nick Lee.
Who is it going to be?
Nick Lee.
Okay. That's the answer I gave him. And he said, what? And I go, yeah, that's who I think it's going to be. Because
we got 1 minute left. So
Okay.
We got to sign off, but we'll jump in next week. We'll finish 65 and then we'll discuss the last 5 men's freestyle weights, which were freaking amazing. For all the people that reached out and checked in on me, especially you, Mark, I appreciate it. I really do appreciate everybody making sure that I was hanging around and back to my fighting self. For Mark Ostrander and for Grant Turner, who did amazing work over there. We'll get a chance to pick his brain next week too, which should be really amazing. I'm David Mirikitani. Thank you guys for watching and listening.